We are here with Chris Rigo today, and thank you so much for joining us. Your retail area is at Cabarrus Brewing. Is that as awesome as it sounds?
I mean, it is. Okay, so Gibson Mill is a really awesome spot. I mean, there's two breweries here. My actual retail location is at the Depot, which is the largest antique mall in the Southeast. But I run the Concord Microcon right here at Cabarrus Brewing Company. So it's awesome. Yeah, it's the largest brewery in the county, and it's just an awesome spot. Gibson Mill is like the coolest spot in Concord right now. So yes, it's pretty awesome. I love it.
Do you like beer?
I love beer. I love beer. Maybe sometimes a little too much, but yes, I'm a big fan of IPAs. And Cabarrus has a great IPA called the So Juicy. If you become a regular, they can hook you up with this thing called River Juice. Yeah, I love some beer, and Cabarrus has a bunch of good options. For the con this year, we might have some Star Wars themed beers on tap as well. Okay, so first and foremost, this year we're starting an hour earlier, so it's 11 to 5. And then after the con, so we usually have 8 to 10 food trucks at the event too. But after the con, once they leave, we're setting up a big screen out in the food truck lot and showing Empire Strikes Back. But the con's from 11 to 5. We'll have a cosplay contest right there on that stage behind me. We're going to have, inside the main tap room, we have this thing called the Artist Attic. So it's the top level of the main tap room. This year we're having two tattoo artists coming out, and they're doing Star Wars themed flash for the event. Obviously, there's a cosplay contest, and there's prizes from local businesses all in the Gibson Mill complex. So it's kind of seeding itself. But tons of comic book vendors. So in this room we're in right now, it'll be about 50 vendors. And I mean, if you can't find the comic book you're looking at or looking for at the show, you might not find it anywhere.
So, what is something you want people to remember about the MicroCon that is different than other conventions?
Well, I would like people to take away that, just the general vibe and impression that, oh, that was a cool venue. That was a cool spot to have an event that was a little bit different than the normal convention center or hotel conference room, stuff like that. So, I mean, Cabarrus Brewing Company, I mean, is a big, cool spot. Gibson Mill in general is a really cool spot. And, the way we run our event, the Concord Microcon, especially nowadays, it's more of a campus style event. So we'll have, vendors down here on the stage. We'll have vendors in the main tap room, artists upstairs. Plus behind you in the kettle room, the main vendor space, we'll have a ton of people as well. Plus there's food trucks, I would just like people to take away the all-inclusiveness of the whole thing. So, and it's a little bit different. Also, there's not a whole lot of events where you can have a beer and dig through long boxes. So it's a little different. It's a little different. So mostly that, yeah. So please come out May 4th. Again, it's free, 11 to 5 o'clock. It is free. Cabarrus Brewing Company, very close to downtown Concord.
Tell us what all you do here besides just being a resident comic nerd expert.
Okay, so I've got my retail spot over at the Depot, and then here at Cabarrus, I run the Concord Microcon. I've done that since 2017. And I also run a open mic night right here at the brewery every other Thursday. So the Concord Microcon happens every year, just one time. That's always the first Saturday in May. So this year it's May 4th. So
Star Wars Day.
Star Wars Day, yep. So after the con this year, we're showing Empire Strikes Back. After the food trucks leave in the lot, we're setting up a big screen and showing that because, well, Empire Strikes Back it's the best Star Wars film.
Where did you come up with the name MicroCon?
Well, we were really leaning into the craft beer vibe. So keep in mind, Cabarrus Brewing Company is a huge brewery, but it's still it's not a Budweiser or Coors Light. It's not that kind of size. So leaning into the micro brew kind of stuff. Also, the first year we did it, the event was actually quite small. So it really was a micro event. I think we only had like 20 vendors, maybe 5 artists. So it was a pretty intimate thing. Can't change the name now though, because branding and marketing and stuff.
You've been doing the MicroCon since 2017. What are some of the coolest or most interesting cosplay that you've seen since you've been doing it?
So I think it was 2018. This was before we were able to utilize all this awesome space. But there was a guy that came dressed as the Hulkbuster armor. So he literally couldn't even get through the main door. He had to duck and had to have a helper and stuff. Last year, I mean, there was a bunch of cool ones last year. One of the most like legit looking ones was a Samus, from Metroid. Just, I mean, it looked like it was just pulled, from the game. Like, um, there was there was a really cool cosplay as Hella a few years ago too. So there's some people that really put in the time and effort and really knock it out. But those are probably my three favorite that I can think of right off the top of my head. There's always a bunch of people that cosplay as Joker and Spider Man, but that Hulkbuster was, I mean, it was something, yeah, just because it was so huge.
So you have a great retail spot here with when all these people come out. What makes your Beardy Weirdy stand out above all the rest of the comic book stores around?
Well, okay, number one, Gibson Mill is just a really awesome spot. Again, it's the coolest spot in Concord, so that alone I feel like sets it apart from a lot of other spots. With Gibson Mill, there's a bunch of different things to check out. So it's cool to have a standalone brick and mortar location, but when you go there, that's all that's there. Here there's all kinds of other stuff to check out. So probably just that. It's just in a really cool setting. I mean, Gibson Mill has a lot to offer. Welcome to the depot. This is where Beardy Weirdies has their retail location. So small pace or place, but packs a punch. So, yep. We've got multiple boxes of just Spider-Man related stuff. There's a Fantastic Four box, mutant related stuff, Silver Surfer, Deadpool. We got complete sets. Whenever we bring in new stuff, which is usually like 3 to 4 times a week, this is where all those go. So these are the new arrival boxes. Again, for an antique mall, this is more comic books than a lot of shops have. So, and all this stuff, it always stays here. This is static stock. So when I go out on the road and set up at conventions, this does not come with me.
I saw this on your Facebook page. What is your biggest fandom? You have comics, music, toys, dinosaurs, retro video games, and beer.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest interest would be comic books. I mean, I've collected comic books since I was 8 years old. I'm 37 now. I've got over 20,000 books in my personal collection. So, I like anything that's in the nerdy, realm of things. But comic books, first and foremost, is the thing that I'm the most passionate about. I just love the silver and bronze age stuff. The 60s and the 70s. That is what I really like the most.
The bigger books.
Well, yeah. But I love collecting a full run. Get a full run of Spider-Man, a full run of Uncanny X-Men, all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I love retro video game stuff. Super Nintendo was the jam. I am a dinosaur nerd. Love that kind of stuff. Toys are great too, especially the '90s Toy Biz stuff, Jurassic Park stuff. Again, dinosaurs, Power Rangers. But yeah, comic books. Comic books are the number one thing when it comes to that kind of stuff in my life.
You went to what, Parkwood?
Yeah, I went to Parkwood High School. I mean, I graduated in 2004. Ended up going to UNCC, but I loved growing up in Waxhaw. I lived way out in like the rural part of Waxhaw. I mean, it was about a 10, 12-minute drive into town. And, when I was growing up there was like a, one stoplight. Speaking of beer, there ain't no breweries. There's none of that kind of stuff. It was a different day and age, but I mean, that area's grown up so much. But growing up, I mean, things have changed a lot with the movies. As soon as they made that first Blade movie and then X-Men in 2000, I mean, it changed everything. We wouldn't have the MCU if it wasn't for that. But when I was growing up, the X-Men animated series, which of course there's a whole new resurgence of interest in that because of X-Men '97, which is so great. If you haven't watched it, please watch it. But I mean, that was a huge thing. And then the Spider-Man animated series. But growing up, there was the original Mighty Morphin Power Ranger show, which sort of, obviously I like dinosaurs and stuff too, but it combined the superhero elements and then like the dinosaurs. Plus, if you like Transformers and big robots that, change and stuff, it kind of amalgamized a lot of those things. Today, it's an awesome world to live in if you like that kind of stuff because there's some clunkers coming out, but the vast majority of things are pretty darn good. So, and the whole, when I was growing up, the X-Men animated series was cool, but if you watched it or if you got too into it, you were still a nerd. And today's culture is so much more accepting. It's almost, it's not nerdy. Uh, it's just a normal thing, so which is really nice uh in retrospect, yeah. So
But when you were a kid, how did Transformers the movie affect you when you were young?
okay, so I loved that film, but when Optimus Prime died, I mean, I'm gonna tell you what, that was like it was crushing. It was absolutely crushing. But I remember getting an uncut version of it, and we're gonna keep this PC, but there's like two like slight cuss words in it, and I was like, "Whoa, this is on the edge." But I loved that, and the soundtrack was awesome too. And when you're growing up, my parents weren't real big into music, but you absorb what you can from here and there, and the soundtrack is awesome. You got the touch. I mean. It was just really cool. It had a lot of really awesome rock songs, cool guitar parts in it. So the Transformers animated film was important and influential for me for a few things. Like, oh, this is an emotional like catastrophe with Optimus Prime dying, but there's a lot of there's all kinds of stuff. Even the soundtrack, yeah. So I love that film. Yeah.
When did you start playing any instruments?
So I started to dabble with guitar. Oh, geez, this would have been like when I was in ninth grade. And to kind of pull it back to what we were talking about, growing up with the X-Men animated series and just the culture at the time, well, the culture wasn't as accepting for nerd stuff. So I was like, okay, well, I can't be into this comic book stuff anymore. And I was really getting into music and guitars were cool. So I was like, yeah, maybe I can get a girlfriend this way and stuff. And strangely enough, that happened really quick. And I've been with the same girl since then. But
How many instruments can you play?
well, I wouldn't say that I'm super proficient at any of them, but I like to consider myself a guitar player, a drummer, a bass player, and I'll dabble in some keys, synths, and stuff. I really love percussion and stuff too, like shakers, tambourine. There's an art to that and stuff too, though. But I like to dabble with anything that I can get my hands on. I had formed a high school band, when I was around 17 years old. It was called Sugar Glider, and it was with Parkwood alumni. And graduating high school, that was like a life goal and dream of mine. Uh, Back then, there was a spot called Tremont Music Hall, and my goal in life at 17 years old was to play the little stage. And we ended up playing sold out shows on the little stage and then the big stage. I think that's like some apartments or something now. But yeah, that was a big goal, and uh, I followed that dream hard, chased it down, and did that from 17 to 27. Ended up getting signed to a small subsidiary label of Warner Brothers. Got to play every state besides Alaska, Hawaii, and Washington State. Two of those are kind of hard to drive to. But yeah, I mean that was my goal. Still got a degree at UNCC and stuff in between touring and recording. But yeah, that was my life goal and did it as long as I could. My old band broke up in 2013.
Okay, so I've started listening to your music. I really like it. I listened to the Wilderness of the Great Abyss, The Moons of Mars, Blood in the Water. I could be wrong, but it sounded like there's a lot of 80s and 90s influence, a lot of sepia tones in your videos, and almost a little bit of horror feel to them as well. Can you tell me a little bit about your musical influences? I think you kind of did already, but
Yeah. So the last 3 years, 2013, my old band broke up and sort of had to change perspective in life and reinvent myself a little bit. So leaned real hard into the comic book stuff, but was always doing, the music stuff in the bag, played drums in some cover bands and stuff. But the last 3 years I've been putting out music each year in October. So I did this guy in 2021, this guy in 2022, and then October of this last year, I did The Wilderness of the Great Abyss, which is a picture disc, which is pretty neat. It's printed in there. But yeah, I love horror stuff. So the videos that I film, I like to, slip some of that stuff in there. But as far as musical influences growing up, one of my favorite bands was Foo Fighters, but I don't think that I would have picked up an instrument if it wasn't for a Canadian band that most people don't know, but they were called the Matthew Good Band, and they had this album called Beautiful Midnight. And if it wasn't for that, I don't think I would have wanted to pick up a guitar. But yeah, in the last 3 years, been really, really loving putting music out with no pressure or expectations of touring hard or getting signed, just doing it to do it. And it is so liberating and rewarding. In March, I decided to put together a live band, and we're playing our first gig this Saturday. I'm not sure when this is coming out, but it'll be April 20th. We're playing over at Green Life Family Farm, which is a cool spot in Concord off Odell School Road. They do music festivals. It's a cool spot, yeah. But I love music. I love writing. I love recording. I love performing. But if it wasn't for Matthew Good Band putting out Beautiful Midnight, I wouldn't have gotten into playing music at all.
I know that March of this year you were slam packed. Luckily, I think you've had some help because you were slammed all last year too. Tell me about your help.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing right now if it wasn't for my better half, Sarah. She is the whole reason, the motivation for what I do in life, period. So I wouldn't be standing here right now if it wasn't for her. But yeah, so March of, just a couple weeks ago, we did 9 conventions, and both Sarah and I sometimes will double book ourselves, and she'll go to one town and I'll go to another one, or I'll go to one state, she'll go to a different state. But yeah, if it wasn't for her, I mean, half of this wouldn't be possible at least. So
Is she at least a fan?
oh yeah, she loves the stuff. Yeah, and it's always a privilege when we get to do conventions together. So I mean, last year we did, 60 events, and maybe a quarter of those were together. But yeah, she's a fan. I mean, we go see like all the movies together. Opening night. Um, yeah, I mean, and that's what makes it so great is like we can vibe on the same things.
How did COVID affect you and your business throughout 2020 and after?
Yeah, so I remember the last convention that happened in the Southeast was the PowerCon in Florence, South Carolina. And there was all this buzz, about the pandemic, and well, they weren't called the pandemic then, but COVID, was on the rise. And that was the last show that happened, and things shut down for at least 3 months. And it was really scary. My retail location had to close, but luckily in 2021, in 2020, we did have to cancel the convention. We held on to the very last moment and made the decision, we've got to cancel this. But we came back in 2021, and in the Southeast, the Concord Microcon was really one of the first shows that came back. We had to do the event mostly outside, but that year we didn't charge vendors anything. And it was incredible the amount of people that came out. And I had a lot of vendor friends that are like, this is my best, one day show ever. And it really didn't have anything to do with me or the show. It's just the general population was so hungry for events because things had receded down and closed up. So it was a challenge. It was genuinely very unnerving for a few months. Obviously, it was very scary at the beginning, but then, you know, that's your livelihood. If your shop isn't open, if the event that you run isn't, going on, and that goes, that was everywhere. Event, conventions just weren't happening. Even the biggest show, in the Southeast, the Heroes Convention, it didn't happen. It didn't happen for several years, really. So it was a weird time, but 2021, it was great, to bring it back, and I'm so glad that so many people came out and the vendors thrived and people were just vibing hard on it. Yeah.
All right, so when I was a kid, I had a lot of different toys. My mom sold all my toys at yard sales. When I went to Retro Toy Con, it made me crazy how much they are now. Are you or were you a toy collector?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I'm a comic book collector, but I do collect toys. Number one, I feel your pain. I'm sorry your mother did that. And, there's a few universal truths in life, and one of those is that nostalgia makes the world go round. So, everyone, they grow out of it, their mom sells it, something, something, and then they reach a point where I want that back. So, for me, growing up, it was the 90s Toy Biz, X-Men, X-Force, the mutant stuff. So I have a huge collection of that. I also love the original Jurassic Park toys. Also love the original Power Ranger toys. So basically all that stuff from 91 to like 95, love it. But I'm sorry your mom sold all your stuff. I feel your pain.
I'm sure you have an amazing collection of everything from comics to toys to music. What are some of your favorite pieces of all of your collection?
So again, first and foremost, I'm a comic book collector. So I pride myself on having, I've got a really high grade Giant Size X-Men 1. It's a 9.6. I've got a Hulk 181, first full appearance of Wolverine. That's a 9.4. I've got a full run of Amazing Spider-Man. I've got a full run of, X-Men, Daredevil, Avengers. I've got the first issue of Fantastic Four. I really pride myself on the Silver and Bronze Age Marvel stuff. So many first appearances and just huge things came out, in those 2 decades. But I also, on the music stuff, I love guitars. I was a very avid collector for a long time, but I still have a sizable Gibson collection. I love SGs. Got a 1973 Gibson grabber bass that's completely awesome. But yeah, guitars, comic books, love it all. So on May 4th, we'll have vendors outside on the stage, inside in the main tap room, and artists upstairs. But the main vendor room is going to be up these big steps. This is the private event space for Cabarrus Brewing Company. It's called the Kettle Room. So make your way, mosey on up those steps and check out a bunch of comic books. May 4th.